Howdy. Today we're going to be talking about the changes coming to Nyx and Trinity as well, because they're both getting light reworks with the Warframe 1999's release, which will be sometime in December. They haven't said when, I don't think, but sometime in this month, since I guess technically it is now December as of 26 minutes ago for me. And there's some pretty interesting changes. I'm very ready to make a juicy Nyx build, since Nyx is going to be a hot goth mommy, and of course we love hot goth mommies around here. So we're going to talk about their changes and some potential builds, I guess. I just kind of wanted to get my thoughts out there, right? Get it all out of my head. So this really is more for myself than anybody else, but I don't know. It's a thing. So with the Nyx's changes, starting right here, we're in the dev workshop, since this is where it gives all the specific details. First, we have her passive. She is getting a new passive. I don't know if this is going to be in tandem with her existing passive. Like, will this be added on, or will this be taking over? Like, do we lose the 20% of what is effective evasion chance? Because that would be unfortunate. Obviously not the end of the world, but it's more than nothing, I guess. Either way, though, her new passive is if there are 5 or more confused enemies within Nyx's affinity range, she gains 200% crit chance on her primary and secondary weapons. Specifically, enemies suffering from Radiation's status effect, Confusion, and Nyx's mind control target. It's confused because now all of her abilities are going to be applying radiation, and the radiation status proc is called Confused, where they attack each other. And in case you didn't know, the higher number of radiation procs just increases how much damage they do to other enemies. This is a very nice increase. You aren't going to be wanting to spam melees as much. This will make her more geared towards gun builds to make use of that crit chance, which is fine. See, she's not really a melee frame anyways. But 200% crit chance for free, and you're pretty much always going to have this active. And you'll see with the changes to her other builds, this is not going to be hard to keep active. Very nice. Now her first ability, Mind Control. Nyx's Mind Control target will now more aggressively attack foes and deal guaranteed radiation procs on their attacks. That is very, very nice, because right now they're really dumb and they don't really attack stuff, so now they'll actually attack stuff, and getting guaranteed rad procs so that it spreads the radiation all over. Extremely nice. On top of that, Mind Control targets are also immune to crowd control like foes with Overguard, which will help make it so they don't get completely destroyed by an enemy crowd controlling them, or a teammate doing it in the game being all buggy wuggy. Targets will also prioritize the enemies Nyx is aiming at. That's nice to help you kill chunkier targets if you need assistance with that. Mind Control targets are now highlighted like a summon to help you keep track of them, and Nyx will see their damage numbers, so it'll be easier to keep track of them, and you'll more visibly see that they're actually doing damage, and this will also make it easier to test damage on them. I am so glad about this part right here. That's going to make my life a hell of a lot easier. Added a HUD element when casting Mind Control that displays the duration and percentage of bonus damage done by your target. Basically, it's just going to be like a little spot on your screen that shows it. See down there, and shows the damage bonus on it. Very, very nice. This HUD element will display a flashing particle when the target absorbs incoming damage. Once the ability expires, this element also briefly shows the total damage dealt by your target. That's nice, so you can see how useful it was. And Mind Control's duration will not start counting down until after the 4-second absorption period window has passed. Nyx retains the functionality of recasting this ability to release her original target, but if done while targeting another enemy, Mind Control will now immediately be cast on them. A lot of incredible changes. So overall, it's not going to be nearly as clunky or annoying an ability. It's going to actually attack shit and apply rad proc, so it's not worthless. Very epic. And I'm thinking there's some interesting things you might be able to do with this, especially because this is her Helminth ability. I'm kind of thinking, imagine going like crazy high strength, get like 400% strength, slap this on Rhino. All right. Mind Control a target. You have Roar. Roar buffs herself. Shoot the dude a bunch. Get a huge damage percent bonus on him. Have the augments for Mind Control to get an even bigger damage percent bonus, which is affected by strength. And Roar applies to nearby allies, including specters and stuff. So it should hopefully be able to apply to this target as well once they're your ally, and that will be an even bigger damage buff, and then you just let that dude murder everything. Preferably a napalm or something, or a bombard to take over would be very funny, but we'll have to wait and see. Ability 2, Psychic Bolts. Psychic Bolts, wait, we'll skip over. I don't need to read that part. Killing an enemy affected by psychic bolts will cause 2 more bolts to spread from it to an unaffected target. The specifically targeting unaffected targets is very nice, so it doesn't waste it by hitting enemies that don't really need it. And this is huge because there's only 6 bolts at base, so now it's just going to spread all over the place. Now displays ability duration upon casting, very nice. Nyx earns a fixed amount of the defenses she removes with psychic bolts. This effect persists for 20 seconds, scaling with duration, and its duration refreshes when further defenses are stripped. The amounts of defenses earned and the armor/overguard cap scales with ability strength. 25 armor per armored enemy up to a cap of 1k, 75 shields per shielded enemy up to a cap of 1200, or up to the overshield cap of 1200, and 500 overguard per enemy with overguard up to a cap of 7500. So now she has healing. She can siphon shields on enemies with shields, and she can siphon overguard, strip overguard, and give it to herself. This is a huge buff to psychic bolts, because not only does Nyx have built-in overguard now, but she has an overguard strip. That is very, very nice. That will make it so much easier to apply rad procs on enemies and actually do stuff. That is so snazzy. And then the augment for it, Pacifying Bolts. Pacifying Bolts now applies 1 stack of radiation upon hits. I am very, very eager for this. So we're going to switch over real quick into game so I can show a little bit of something with it. Right now, because they didn't say they're changing the amount of bolts, Psychic Bolts only has 6 bolts. It has a debuff duration of 11 seconds. It has a def reduction of 80%, and it reduces the enemy speed by 20%, which is nice. And it is affected by both duration and strength for most of those stats, but not the bolts. And then the augment for it makes it so that enemies are also confused, and it throws an additional 3 bolts. So what it should do, I'm assuming, is this Pacifying Bolts, it's going to be enemies are now radiated, right? They confused as in the radiation proc, and it should still have the extra 3 bolts. I still don't think it's going to be enough to be worth using afterwards. I definitely wouldn't personally use Pacifying Bolts most of the time, though I guess it really depends. With the overguard, it is going to be a very big increase in survivability with Nyx, but you're going to need to be careful because you shouldn't be getting the buffs or the siphon overguard immediately, because the bolts do have a travel time. So if I cast these out, you can see they're decently fast, but they have to seek enemies out, which means if they don't hit a guy with overguard immediately, then you're not going to get overguard immediately to immediately overguard gate. So if I like cast it from here, all right, you can see it didn't hit them immediately. That's like half a second, probably a little less, maybe a third of a second. Either way, that's not going to be instant, which means you have to be careful because you can't just spam the overguard gate like that. Which is why, personally, I don't think you need catalyzing shields necessarily, but running Brief Respite will probably be a very nice thing to do with it. This is a build, we'll get to that later maybe, I don't know. But yeah, Brief Respite, very, very nice. I think it'll be that way you can get your shields back, so you get that little shield gate if it's needed before the overguard hits, so that you can then get the overguard gate and just not die instantly. Now let's go back to the page. Full screen it. Why is it doing this? There we go. Now let's scroll down. Ability 3, Chaos. Chaos applies 10 radiation stacks for the duration of the ability instead of simply applying confusion. This means that chaos enemies will now deal 100% bonus damage to your enemies. For clarity, confusion is the name of radiation status effect. Not really much of a difference. Chaos is just, now it's rad procs instead of its own kind of confusion. This is nice for consistency's sake and more like, I guess, synergy with some stuff. and it applies the status for like CO and that sort of thing, but it's not a big change overall. That's why I think Chaos is gonna be her Helmut's option. I wouldn't personally want to use it because you cast it. It's got a long cast speed. This is with a casting speed shard. Okay, it's got a long cast time. You're stuck in place while you cast it. And it's an instant thing. It'll instantly apply it into a fairly big radius, yes. But then once those enemies die, you're going to have to reapply it. Which is why I think after the changes, instead, this juicy ability, Chirinka Pillar, the Chonk Chonk Pillar as I call it, it's going to be perfect because you slam this down and it just pulses guaranteed radiation procs onto enemies. And it slows the enemies down. This is a perfect helmet ability for Nyx. Absolute perfection, and you can have 2 of them out, and they have a pretty decent size as well, the radius, and they also have an extremely long base duration at 35 seconds. Very, very good. So I'm definitely thinking get rid of her chaos ability. Let's go back. There we go. I don't know why it keeps doing that. And absorb, the last thing they changed on her. This one's kind of crazy. I mean, it's not a very big change, but it's a big enough change to really matter. Absorb is now a duration-based ability. Cast it to absorb all surrounding damage for 5 seconds, scales with duration, and redirect it in a radial explosion. Instead of only absorbing damage directed at you, the damage of confused enemies will also be affected by absorb. This allows for increased synergy with chaos and mind control, since those foes will no longer be excluded from this ability. Since it is no longer a channel ability, the drain 8 energy per 1000 damage absorb mechanic has been removed. That's huge. Nyx will also be able to ascend and descend while in absorb. That's nice, so you can still move around using jump and crouch. For every 5k damage absorbed, Nyx will remain invulnerable for 1 second after absorb ends, up to a cap of, I think it's supposed to be like 5 seconds. It doesn't stay here, but I feel like I remember seeing that somewhere. So you can get iframes after ends, so you're just not immediately fucked. And they added a weapon damage cap to the ability stats for visibility. I'm not sure exactly. Maybe they explained in the dev stream, but I didn't watch the whole dev stream. But I'm not sure if the enemies that do the damage of confused enemies will also be affected by absorb. So the damage they take, or is the damage they deal? Because that's very important. If it's the damage they deal, that's going to be very nice. If it's the damage they take, that's okay. If it's both, that's huge. But because it doesn't drain extra energy per 1000 damage absorbed, it's purely based off of a duration at base, or with the augments, it's going to go back to an energy per second. Assimilate retains its infinite duration. Since we've removed the energy drain per 1000 damage absorbed, we've increased energy cost from 4 to 6.5 per second to compensate. Added energy drain stats in the mod description, since it no longer applies to the base ability. This means with Assimilate, you are actually invincible. Before, you were pseudo-invincible so long as the enemy didn't go too high of a level to like destroy your energy bar. But now you are legitimately invincible with Assimilate. You can just walk around even at level cap and never die. That's going to be very, very funny. Because Assimilate's already a decent ability. You move at 50% speed, but the area of effect is halved when you have Absorb active, right? So you're slow as hell. It says 50% speed, but it's 50% of your move, or like walk speed, not sprint speed. Though you can get around this by rolling, dodge rolling. And if you have high parkour velocity, like right now I should have, yeah, there we go, an arcane on, there we go. Now I got high parkour velocity because of arcane consequence. So it's not too bad. And this makes you completely invincible, other than if you take too much damage and lose all your energy. But after the changes, that doesn't matter anymore. So people that play this playstyle will be able to play this playstyle all the time. I'm going to use Assimilate for sure in my builds, though I'm not the kind of person to always stay in Assimilate. I think it's the nice kind of thing to cast if you need it, to tank a bunch of stuff and then nuke the map. But I don't think I'm the kind of person that would want to sit in Assimilate all of the time. And that's all the changes they're doing to Nyx. So I want to briefly go over a general build idea that I'm going to have, because I already made a build that I think is going to be really good for her. We have 5 Archon Shards, Tau Forged, of course. 2 of these are for strength, because strength is nice for more damage from absorb. Not that that really matters that much, but it is a conversion percent on the 4. So strength will make you more damage. Sorry about the yawning. A little more damage on Chivering Caterpillar. That doesn't really matter that much. More consistent armor strip / overguard strip from psychic bolts, because we need high enough strength to get a full strip if possible. And it also makes it so that our mind control, assuming we're using the augment, gets even bigger damage bonus. Mind Freak. And we want extra damage bonus to make our mind control target do some huge damage, so we like that. And we also have Umbral Intensify for more strength and Molts Augmented for more strength. We need this much because we have overextended nuking our strength to give us more range so that we can hit more enemies. With our 3, which is Chiringa Pillar in this setup, because we've replaced Chaos, it also makes it so Psychic Bolts can go farther, and Absorb has a bigger radius around us, just to make sure we absorb more damage, not just for ourselves, but like if a teammate's next to us or if our companion's near us, to keep them alive. Arcane Consequence is here for parkour velocity on headshot, so that we aren't slow as hell. Mars Anguish, because we're going to have Overguard and we're going to be in Assimilate most of the time, so we don't really need knockdown res. So getting parkour velocity and being able to teleport and heavy attack, which is pretty funny, and sprint speed, this is decently nice. Though what I think most people will probably want to run if you haven't already put a form on the Exo slot is I would just slap on Mobilize. This is a very good, very cheap mod that basically every player in existence should have, even if you're like Mastery 1. Equilibrium is completely sustaining our energy. We have on, like I already said, overextended, but also stretch for even more range. Prime Continuity mixed with 2 ability duration shards to give us 185 duration, because that makes our mind control target last longer. The effects of psychic bolts with the armor strip and stuff last longer. Chivering Pillar lasts longer, and then our absorb doesn't consume energy as fast with assimilate. Prime flow, of course, for energy max, so that we have 641, so we don't have like a non-existent energy max. And brief respite, which I mentioned earlier, is so that we have a little breathing room for if we need to cast an ability arc second and it doesn't hit the enemy, to strip the overguard and give it to us immediately. This just gives us a little more survivability, which, since I'm not perma-sitting in assimilates with absorb, I would like to not die immediately, because yes, you can just be invincible in there, but then you're really slow. So I would like to be able to run around when I want to without just dying instantly. I think this is going to be a very strong build. I do have a setup with like a companion weapon stuff, but I'm going to wait to show the whole setup until after the changes come out, and then I'll do like a whole Nyx max investment build or something. I don't know. We'll see. I think that's gonna do it though. I'm not gonna talk about Trinity, even though I said I was, because I don't want this video to be super long. I guess I'll maybe do a Trinity video after this or something. So if you want to watch that, look if that's there or something. Adios.